Look, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time explaining this. These are the greatest dumplings of all time. I could eat 4,000 of them in one sitting. What more do you wanna know? You need this. Today we're making soup dumplings, also known as xiaolongbao.
小笼包.
I think that a lot of people get scared when it comes to making these, right? If you've had them before, you go, man, how'd they get the soup in here? What, are they injecting this or something? What kind of crazy sack of juice is this? It's simpler than you think. I honestly think this is something that anybody can make. I'm gonna break this down into 3 elements: filling, the dumpling dough, and of course, the dipping sauce. Wait, Josh, what about the juicy squirt squirt? How in tarnation did they get the soup in there? It was actually with chicken or pork stock that's been reduced and chilled into a gel, similar to an aspic. Sorry, what? Yeah, it's called an aspic. Anyway, solidified broth that then melts when heated. Right, so let's begin with our broth. In a medium sauce pot, add just enough oil to coat the bottom of the pan and heat to medium high. Once that's hot, add in 2 to 3 green onions sliced into 1-inch pieces. Sear those bad boys, tossing occasionally for 2 to 3 minutes or until lightly charred. Remove from the pan and add half a pound or 225 grams of boneless pork Boston butt cut into 2 to 3 big chunks and let that sear for 2 to 3 minutes per side just to get some nice browning. Don't worry about cooking it through, all right? It's gonna cook later. Remove from the pot and now add 1.5 pounds or 680 grams of pork neck bones, which have already been rinsed with cold water to remove any impurities. Then add your roasty toasty meat, 3/4 pound or 454 grams of pork skin cut into manageable pieces. Now follow that with your green onion and a 1-inch knob of ginger thinly sliced. Cover that with 5 cups or a little over 1 liter of water. Now set that over medium high, bring to a boil, then immediately reduce to a simmer, skim off any scum that rises to the top, and reduce for 2 to 2.5 hours, or until you're left with just 2.5 to 3 cups of broth. Then remove all the bones, strain everything through a strainer and into a flat container like the shallow third pan. Season that generously with salt, let it cool close to room temp, then wrap with plastic wrap and chill in the fridge for at least 4 hours, but ideally overnight, and it's the next day. Now before we make our filling, you need to realize that you cannot have a dumpy sans dumpy dough. So your wrapper dough needs to be homemade, but good news, it only requires 2 ingredients. First, in a medium-sized bowl, add 1 1/4 cup or 170 grams of all-purpose flour. Begin stirring that with a fork while constantly stirring in 3.5 tablespoons or 50 grams of hot water. I want it scalded, brother. Stir until all the water is absorbed by the flour, and then stir in 3 tablespoons or 40 grams of just room temperature water. Once it begins to form a dough, knead that for 5 to 8 minutes or until you get a beautifully smooth dough like this. Wrap that in plastic wrap and rest at room temperature for 45 minutes. Now while that's resting, let's make our filling. In a medium-sized bowl, add 1 pound or 450 grams of ground pork with a high fat percentage. I ground my own because much of what was at the market was too lean and I was frustrated, so I just ground some Boston butt roast. Knead your ground pork till nice and emulsified, and to that you'll add 3 green onions, very finely minced, a pinch of ground white pepper, half a teaspoon or 2 grams of granulated sugar, half a teaspoon or 2 grams of salt, 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of soy sauce, 1.5 tablespoons or 22 grams of Shaoxing wine, half a teaspoon or 3 grams of toasted sesame oil, and knead it together until thoroughly combined and homogeneous. Now this is where our broth gel comes into play. Once it's fully chilled, scrape off any solidified fat off the top, and then, using a spatula, separate it from the sides of your container and pop it out onto a cutting board, and cut that broth sheet into 1/2-inch cubes, being gentle and careful not to break them into little pieces. Gather about 1 cup or 235 grams of that broth gel, add it to your pork mixture, and gently fold that together until evenly incorporated. Okay, it's shaping time. This is the only part that's going to be a bit of a challenge for people who've never done it, but hey, this is where you get good. Now separate the rest of dumpling dough into 2 pieces, roll those out into long rods, about 1 inch thick, cut off segments weighing 10 to 15 grams each. That's 20 to 25 dumpers, y'all. Take one of your balls and, dusting with flour as needed, roll it into a beautifully round disc that's about 3.5 inches in diameter. Then grab a heaping tablespoon of filling, add it to the center of the disc, and look, if you've never done this, please be patient. Don't expect it to be perfect on your first try. All you're gonna do is cup your dough, grab a piece of that, carefully fold it over itself to create a little, well, pleat. Stick that fold onto itself and then repeat each little pleat, one next to the other, as close to the previous pleat until you've made your way all the way around the whole dumpling. And it's mostly closed up. You know that you've done it right when you're left with sort of a hole at the top. Keep your mind out of the gutter. Gently pinch and twist your hole shut, and that is a goddamn soup dumpling if I ever seen one. Again, this takes practice, so repeat this process with all of your pieces of dough. Now the dumplings are done and you're ready to cook them. All you need to do is cut out little squares of parchment about 4 by 4 inches. Place your dumplings on each piece of parchment individually, and you're ready to steam. Add a shallow 1.5-inch depth of water in a pot, bring that to a boil over medium high, then reduce the temp to medium. Load up a bamboo steamer with as many dumplings as you can, leaving at least 1/2 inch of space in between them. Now pop the lid on and place your basket on your steaming pot and, well, let it steam for 8 minutes. You could twiddle your thumbs while that steams, or you could make the perfect dipping sauce, which consists of 2 tablespoons or 17 grams of spicy chili crisp solids and a 1/3 cup or 88 grams of Chinese black vinegar. Yep, that's it. You could also add a splash of red vinegar to this if you're feeling a little bit naughty.
quality.
Now serving this is very simple. Obviously the dumplings will be presented as is, but very important to serve the sauce. Place it in a nice little ramekin or pinch bowl. To that sauce, add a few threads of very finely julienne fresh ginger. And you're gonna do that for each individual serving of sauce. It's a game changer, don't skip. Now at this point your dumplings are done and all there's left to do is bite a little hole, get a little slurp of broth, dunk that feller into the sauce, and throw what is surely to be one of the best bites of food you'll ever have in the history of your home cooking. I mean, look at these. They look stunning. They've got a sheen. Mommy? Right, how do you eat a soup dumpling? Well, you take a little bite, and then you pour the soup out, and at this point you can kind of eat it however you want, although the way that I like to do it is give that little opening, that hole, you now are going to fill with your dipping sauce. Now it's refilled, you have your soup, give the soup a little sip, go to another dimension, and then combine it all. That just sent me to another hemisphere. I don't even know what that means. I would argue that it is better, not just because it tastes better, or it has a better texture, or I made it with my own two frickin' hands, but because it has customizability. You can do whatever you want with these soup dumplings.